In the middle of this process, I heard from a teacher from my childhood, one of the teachers who actually taught me how to use my white cane, who reached out of the blue after many years and said, I saw this open call for a blind actress, and I know when you were really little you acted and you gave it up because you never saw really a future for yourself, even in community theater. Blind people never really have an opportunity to do such things because blind characters are typically played by sighted people. And I think this would be an amazing opportunity for you. I don't know what you're up to. I know you're still at school, but I can only imagine you in this part. And I said, thank you, that's really nice, but I don't act. And let it go. Heard back from her the following day. She's like, did you send in a tape? Did you change your mind? Did you send it in? I went, no. She's like, you have to. And I thought, well, I really did want something different, and I wanted to do something creative, and I've always wanted to be a storyteller, so why not just put together a tape, and it could be really fun, and it could just be maybe a week of something fun to do. What do you say when you speak?
I say, isn't the world a beautiful place?
It's just such a beautiful story in general. It makes you feel so many things for so many people who are very different from you, and so for all of those years, it has been a book that's very special to my family, and I have a copy that my mom had bought in 2014 before it even won the Pulitzer that I had brought with me every place I've ever moved. And I love hard copy books, even though I can't read them myself. I love having them, and I love keeping them by the nightstand, and I love that experience of having the book in my hand as I listen to the audio. And that is the only book that has been in every apartment or every dorm room I've moved to. It's really extraordinary. So this book's always been really special because it's always been on my nightstand or part of my life, and now it's sitting in my trailer, and as CAST comes through, I have everybody sign it, so that's really special.
Papa, where are you? I'm listening.
Marie is a thoughtful, people-smart person who is always categorizing the world around her and trying to understand the people around her better. Her goal is to, I think, not only be as independent and as free as she can be, but to also allow the people around her to have that same sense of freedom and that same sense of smarts and control and wittiness and spunk that she has, that she thinks is so important to her. And it's beautiful to see the contrast between all the characters in this story, because her relationship with her father and the independence that he gives her, she almost tries to pass down to someone like Etienne. That's a really important part of her character, is that people-smart quality.
Someone that has done too many things that he is not proud of and that he would have rather avoided of doing. So he does carry a lot of guilt and sadness about that guilt and the things that he had to do to survive. He finds that ability to build radios and that love for radios, and I think that's kind of an escape for him and a refuge, something necessary that he has to do when he's young. I mean, it's a love, but it's also he's drawn to it. Like he has to do that to escape the sort of bitterness in the world, because when he listens to the radio, he hears that professor with his sort of kids show talking about truth and beautiful things in the world, and I think that's where he what he most connects with beautiful things and the truth.
I want this character to be an authentic portrayal of someone who's blind, a young girl growing up to become a young woman who's blind. And her movement quality, her thought process about her blindness is going to be very different than what a sighted person would assume if they haven't lived that. So that's important for me to bring to the screen. And it's also important for me to realize that my experience of blindness is very different from Marie's. So as I'm going through my world, I use lots of different technology. I have different backgrounds, different history. I live in a different country than she does. When I was little, I took lots of ballet classes, so that affects the way I move. I use a guide dog as well as a cane. She only uses a cane. She wouldn't have had a lot of the opportunities that I've had. So I want to bring that quality into the character, as well as realize that the blind community nowadays, especially in the US and Europe, has the opportunity to have lots of training. We're trained to use assistive technology. We're trained in Braille. We're trained to use a white cane. Whereas someone in Marie's position would not have had those opportunities provided. So her Braille would look a little bit different than someone who's super proficient nowadays.
The light you get from a piece of coal is actually sunlight.
For someone like me, for instance, I am a child of the technology world, a child of the 21st century. So while I learned Braille and I learned it well, it was never really a big part of my life. It's not the way I choose to read big books, for instance. It's just another accessibility feature that I'll use. But Marie uses it to access everything. And so her Braille is going to look a lot smoother and faster and just a bit more put together than mine. But I also realize that my sloppiness, my Braille, comes from a lack of training over the years since I've stopped working on it. And she would have never had training. So I make her Braille really fast, but I add all of my bad habits into it. So it's actually an authentic portrayal of her experience as a blind person, growing up in that period with the availability of the technology and resources that she would have had. So it's those little bits and pieces that you just cannot capture if you are a sighted person trying to put yourself into this position. A lot of film and TV trains actors to play blind as a skill, when in fact it's actually a culture. So the same way that we respect that cultural diversity should be represented on screen efficiently, the disabled community is part of that cultural diversity, but it really hasn't been accepted as such yet. And I think that's really important, that all marginalized voices have an opportunity to not only be brought to film and television and to literature, but to be done so authentically. And that makes all of the work that we do here, and that makes this project all the more powerful, all the more meaningful, and it makes it a lot better.
Especially that radio training. And so I basically came a week before filming, and then every day for about, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 hours, I sat together with the props master, and he talked me through the radios, the different sorts of radios, and I actually built one myself, and I learned about how it all works and why it was possible back then to find frequencies with such a simple radio, because nowadays it wouldn't be possible because there's too much traffic in the air. But back then it was possible, and it's basically just coil, antenna, a fork as a dial. It's super simple, and but extraordinary that it worked.
Marie's movement quality is very important to the portrayal of her character. In the book, and I've tried in the film as best I can, she's described as very graceful, moving almost like a ballet dancer in slippers. So when people perceive her in the book, that's typically what they would think of her. And the movement with her cane is being very fluid, and her hands moving. I think there's a line somewhere in the book where her hands move across the page of Braille like spiders. So I've tried to keep all of those qualities to how I play this character without turning into a full-on ballerina all the time, keeping it truthful. She uses a lot of touch points with her hands, so the audience will see that I use the back of my hand in the same way on the same pieces of furniture or the same parts of the house throughout the story. And when I'm in a totally new place, I will use, my hands will be a bit more freer and looser. I will use my hands a lot more than in a place where I'm familiar with.
Light lasts forever, for 1 billion years inside a piece of coal.
But darkness, the professor said.
Darkness lasts not even for
1 second. When you turn on the light.
So Shawn Levy is directing our 4-part miniseries, and it has been an absolute blast working with him, because he's so full of love and energy. Well, yeah, and love for his characters, his actors, the story, the whole process of filmmaking, films in general. and so enthusiastic. It's unbelievable where he gets that energy from. It's, I'm full of envy. How do you do that? But it's contagious, and that's why I love going to set every day. And because he loves his actors, he loves to work closely with us. And I think that's a gift, and he's heartwarming and, well, wonderful person, very talented director.
For the first time after I got the role, we met in December in New York. I was so excited to meet him and so excited to see how caring he is to tell the story in the way it should be told, both as a gorgeous cinematic experience that's visual, that brings the sighted audience into a beautiful visual space, but also a visual space as related to a blind character, but also to tell the story of blindness in a really authentic way that doesn't detract from, you know, the things that might not always be so pretty or so put together. And I loved the intellectual conversations we were able to have about, you know, bringing this character to the screen and bringing, you know, her lived environment, the space around her to the screen, and how we could do that in a way that wasn't just focused on, you know, the blindness of it, but what I wanted to achieve as an artist. And I feel like that's such a gift that he pulled this newcomer out of school who's never acted in her life, never auditioned for anything in my life, and he said, I want you to be a creative partner, and I want to sit down and talk to you as an equal, and I want you to bring to this character what you want to bring to her. I wish I had a character like this when I was younger, and now I get to be that person for someone else through someone like Shawn.
He says the most important light is the light you cannot see.
What does that mean?
Well, if you hadn't interrupted me, I would have found out.
Lars, you know, based on his character, I was like, oh boy, this could be really scary. And Lars is a human teddy bear. So also a deeply philosophical human teddy bear, which as someone who's studied philosophy, I love. He has given me so much career advice, so much insight into how this industry works and how your own self-perception will take root and how it will change over time. And I love doing scenes with him because he is so terrifying when he's in character, and he is just gigantic, both in his presence and physically, that I feel dwarfed, and it's such an extraordinary feeling to have in those two characters. But also just to spend time on set with him, and he's really funny and very compassionate and completely opposite of his character. So we have a good time.
Aria, who is an absolute joy to be around. I think it's so amazing because she's never done anything, she's never been on a set, and she came a month early and sort of just watched us work because we mainly were filming my part of the story. And she is such a quick study. It is absolutely amazing.
With Hugh, I've loved getting to know him both artistically and intellectually because he's such a dynamic, big presence on screen, but he also is really, he's given me so much advice and so much feedback on my performance that has been invaluable to my own growth. And the relationship between our two characters is such a unique one. It's almost an inverse relationship that it's been really fun to play with how we engage with each other on screen and how we capture that dynamic. We did a scene the other day that we ended up kind of throwing in a little bit of humor or ad-libbing a few things here or there, and it's so cool to see that I can have that freedom as a newcomer to step into that.
Well, Hugh Laurie is Hugh Laurie. He's absolutely phenomenal. And he's also an absolute joy to be around. And he's so wise. He has this wise aura, which I don't know if I've ever sensed anything like that before. And I think that's exactly what Etienne, the professor, Etienne needs. And but also he's a bit of a badass, I think. and that suits the role very well too.
Working with Mark, obviously we wanted that relationship on screen to be really special and powerful and be as dynamic and interesting as it is in the book and as special as it is in the book, and to bring that to screen, something that was really important to us. So he's spoken with my parents and he's spoken with me at length about what it was like for me to grow up and what might have been different if I grew up in a different time, and getting to know each other as people and knowing what we are both like. And we're hilarious. I'll just put that out there. We're so funny. No one thinks we are funny, which probably means we're not. But it's been so much fun to work with him because we're going through this, this quite intense, dramatic story. And in between takes and sometimes in takes, we're trying to, crack each other up a bit, which is fun.
I'm gonna fetch Marie and take her downstairs. You stop over here.
All the light we cannot see. The title of the book, the title of our series. Well, obviously it's not about the light, but about the good and the love and the hope and the innocence. And I think that is really what matters, not the obvious, but all of those things, all of them that you can't see, but which you can feel, and which you can transmit, and which you can pass on to someone. And I think it's really about that, to learn to come back to the good in the people and to appreciate that.
The phrase, all the light we cannot see, has, of course, significant meaning for Marie's character. And I think at first glance, pun intended, people may think that it has to do with her vision. I do think that, obviously there is some significance to that insofar as she is a blind character. But I don't think that's quite the meaning. I think it is a message of hope when you're in a time of darkness, what seems like complete darkness, where everything familiar has left you, the people you love have left you, that you can still see some sort of hope or light on the other side. I think it also, the message also connects to the radio waves, that we can see that there are connections between people, whether it's through the radio or through the technology we use more often today, or even just energy of individual people, that you are connected even if you don't see that connection up front. So someone like Marie and Werner, they're connected by radio waves, which in and of themselves are a light you cannot see, but they also are connected through their sense of integrity and their sense of hope and not wanting the world to destroy their individuality, their personhood, and what makes them them.
No more coffee, Uncle Etienne. I'm finishing up.
No, this is for me. And it's brandy.
I cannot underestimate how powerful this will be for the blind community, for the disability community, but also for people who have never met a person like me, who now I get to be brought into your home and I get to share my story with you through Marie. And I get to share Marie's way of navigating the world, how it's different from my own, how people navigate this space together. And that's what humanity and storytelling is all about. And it's such a privilege to be part of that catalyst, part of that change. I also hope that the audience will understand that the world is a different place for different people, and part of that is disability, and part of that is our bodies, but it's our brains as well, and the way we learn, the way we're brought up, the way we interact with our environment, the way we learn to navigate our environment is different for everybody, regardless of whether you see or you don't. And I hope that some parent or some kid is gonna watch this and feel for the first time that here I am, I'm not alone. That's all I hope to achieve from this. If it's one thing, it's, people like my parents who didn't have a role model for their daughter, to finally have that role model for them. Or, some little girl who would love to see a public figure like her, to be able to believe that they can do anything. And maybe it's not acting. Maybe it's, you know, it's anything. But to know that the door is open for you to do whatever it is. You know, maybe it's fighting in the resistance, you know, maybe it's being a PhD student, actress, writer, maybe it's anything. But I hope if it's just one person, it will be enough.